Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name is Atarot Azizi Namini. I'm director of the IBT/ABC-UTC here at Florida International University. Very warm welcome to our May 2026, the monthly webinar, the City of Pittsburgh Overhauls Bridge Asset Management System in response to Fern Hollow Bridge. We are delighted to have with us the Chief Engineer, City of Pittsburgh, Eric Setzler, and Rusi, the Vice President of the WSP, formerly with the PennDOT. Before we get started with the webinar, just a couple of news. December 1st and 2nd, our 2026 World Bridge Engineering Conference will take place. We hope that many of you who have enjoyed our technology transfer activity have marked your plan to be in Miami, Florida on December 1st and 2nd. The abstract submission was extended. In fact, deadline is May 25th. So if you have not submitted abstract, if you want to submit, May 25th is the deadline, just a couple of days from now. Registration is open. There is an opportunity to exhibit at the conference. Please use that opportunity. More importantly, if you have a project that is you feel like worthy of the award, there is an award program. We are going to recognize individuals that they have contributed in different ways to bridge engineering and the projects. We are going to recognize them during the conference in the general session. The deadline is June 30. Please consider that and submit your nomination. Go to our website so you can go ahead and submit your nominations. There is a travel scholarship available. If you are representing a bridge owner in the US, you are eligible to receive travel scholarship. There's an application process. Go to our website and submit your application. Day before the conference, on November 30, we will have a major non-destructive testing workshop. The details will be posted on our website. One important workshop. Many of you are familiar with a sprayable UHPC workshop. A sprayable UHPC is a game-changing technology. In collaboration with Georgia DOT in October, all the details are not set. What we know is that it's going to be a two-day event. First day is going to be a lecture on the sprayable UHPC. The second day is going to be a demonstration. If you are interested, please send me an email at aazizina@fiu.edu. Seats will be limited, and the priorities are going to be given to contractors and people who wants to use this technology in the field. In conjunction with the conference, there will also be another event, the US DOT Transportation Infrastructure Summit. More information will be posted on our website. This is a very interesting program, UTC consortiums that works in the infrastructure field. So the first annual Transportation Infrastructure Summit will be held in conjunction during the December 2nd, actually, at the conference. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Kathy, who's going to share some additional news related to bridge engineering. Kathy?
Thank you, Tora. My name is Kathy Kroll. I am a co-director of technology transfer at the IBT/ABC-UTC. I'd like to welcome you to our 182nd webinar in our monthly webinar series. Before we get started with the presentation, I'd like to share with you some upcoming industry news. First, the 4th International Interactive Symposium on UHPC will be held in Des Moines, Iowa, June 14th through the 17th. For anyone interested in UHPC, this is a very valuable conference. The Engineers Society of Western Pennsylvania will be presenting the International Bridge Conference, the IBC, from June 15th through the 17th in National Harbor, Maryland. Next, AASHTO's Committee on Bridges and Structures will be holding their annual meeting June 28th through July 2nd in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our partner university, Texas A&M, will be hosting a live workshop on biochar applications in concrete. This is an IBT/ABC-UTC associated event that will be held on June 29th through 30th in Bryan, Texas. For more information, see the QR code on the screen or contact Jeff Bullard. Next is the Precast Prestressed Concrete Institute's Committee Days Conference, which will be held September 9th through the 12th in San Antonio, Texas. Continuing to our own events, on September 15th, we'll be presenting our annual in-depth web training. This event is similar to this webinar series, but it goes from 11 a.m. to 3:15 p.m. Eastern, giving us additional time to delve deeper into a particular topic. This year's topic will be Accelerated and Innovative Bridge Deck Repair. Mark your calendars for this educational event. Our next monthly webinar will be on Thursday, June 25th from 1 to 2:15 Eastern. Note this is a little later in the month than normal. Florida DOT will be presenting on cathodic protection efforts in their state, both present and future. Dr. Oliver Chung, the Florida State Corrosion and Composite Materials Engineer, will be presenting. That's all for our announcements. On to our standard housekeeping items. As many of you may know, these webinars are recorded and posted on the IBT ABC UTC website in the section titled Monthly Webinar Archives. So you can access this and all previous webinars for future learning and to share with interested colleagues. I'd also like to point out that a PDF version of today's presentation posted in the archives. I am noticing that we might have a little bit of digital lag today, so I really would encourage you to download those handouts and follow in real time if you are experiencing any latency issues between voice and PowerPoint slides. Lastly, this presentation will be followed by a question and answer session. We have a number of questions that were submitted with registration. With that, we will begin our feature presentation. We're happy to welcome our presenters, Eric Setzler, the City of Pittsburgh's Chief Engineer, and Lou Ruzzi, a Vice President at WSP, formerly Pennsylvania DOT District Engineer, and a member of our UTC's Advisory Committee. Eric and Lou will be discussing the Fern Hollow Bridge collapse and how the City of Pittsburgh overhauled their bridge asset management program in response. Eric will get us started.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, we are here today to talk about the City of Pittsburgh's Bridge Asset Management Program. As Kathy said, my name is Eric Setzler. I am the Chief Engineer for the City of Pittsburgh, and I have been in that role since 2019. A brief agenda, I am going to talk some about the Fern Hollow Bridge collapse and reconstruction at the beginning. That's not the focus of the presentation, but it was quite a great, interesting project, and I will talk about that some. I will turn it over to Lou to talk about the Bridge Asset Management contract that WSP was the prime consultant on. And then I will come back and talk a little bit about our bridge program today and our bridge maintenance division. Just to orient folks who might not be familiar, this is the location of Pittsburgh here in Pennsylvania in the United States. And a little beautiful picture of our downtown here with the three rivers. We are known as the City of Bridges. As far as the city itself, our bridge portfolio, there are over 450 bridges in the city, but the city itself, we own and maintain about 143 bridges. Just to give you a brief sense of what they're like, we have 89 of those qualify for the National Bridge Inspection Standards program, so they're over 20 feet and carry vehicular traffic. We have a lot of pedestrian bridges or trail bridges, 47 of them. Our bridges range in length from 8 feet up to over 1,600 feet in length. Our biggest bridge has a deck area of over 100,000 square feet, and we maintain about 1.25 million square feet of deck area total. So I'm going to jump in and talk about the reconstruction of the Fern Hollow Bridge. This was a project, just to mention the project team to start. The City of Pittsburgh is the owner. PennDOT and FHWA had oversight. Our contractor was Swank Construction, and their design firm was HDR. And you see some other folks on the screen that were involved in the project. So the Fern Hollow Bridge carries Forbes Avenue, a 4-lane NHS road. The City of Pittsburgh in our eastern area over Frick Park. And the picture below is the previous bridge. This is a photo showing the bridge kind of through the trees. It was a steel K-frame structure, non-redundant, and it was made of uncoated weathering steel. The bridge was about 450 feet long and carried about 21,000 vehicles per day. Also had a lot of pedestrian and bicycle traffic due to being in a park, and carried bus traffic. On the morning of January 28th, 2022, it was a very cold morning, and there was some snow on the ground, but the bridge suddenly collapsed, as you can see from these pictures here. There were several vehicles on the bridge, including a transit bus, an articulated bus. There were some injuries, but thankfully no one was killed as part of the collapse. Immediately after the collapse, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, responded and did a thorough investigation of the collapse and some of the causes of it. I'm not going to go into that portion of this in this presentation, but the NTSB did release a final report in February of 2024, and all that information is available on their website. So if you're more interested in the collapse portion of it, I would encourage you to check out the NTSB's website where you can find the reports. One of the first things that was done was to remove the vehicles from the collapsed bridge, and one of the challenges was removing the bus, and Allegheny Crane Rental actually provided a very large crane and actually picked the bus up off the bridge and set it back onto firm ground. So immediately the city of Pittsburgh worked with Pennsylvania DOT to work on rebuilding this important structure, and the governor of Pennsylvania issued an emergency proclamation. The mayor also issued a declaration of emergency in the city. This allowed us to really fast track the reconstruction project. There was a reimbursement agreement that delegated responsibility from the city to PennDOT, so they basically kind of took over the project and ran it in coordination with us. The emergency allowed them to use a sole source procurement method and ultimately a progressive design build contract, which allowed us to get into construction very quickly, even as the design was still being completed. We were able to streamline right-of-way utility and environmental processes, although all of them were completed. They were just completed concurrently instead of kind of sequentially as they typically are. It just so happened that the President Biden, President of the United States, was in town unrelated to the collapse that day, and he did come and visit the disaster site, which brought a lot of attention to the collapse. And $25 million of federal funds were able to be allocated to the project to cover the reconstruction. So there really was great collaboration between the city, PennDOT, the contractor, the designer, and all the various sub-consultants, subcontractors, suppliers on the project, which allowed it to go very fast. We got through the whole thing. We had the bridge reopened to traffic in 11 months in December of 2022. And, you know, this would typically take at least 5 years for a typical project to really able to by collaborating and really prioritizing, we were able to really speed that up. I have a whole series of pictures to just kind of walk through the process a little bit. This is showing some of the demolition and cleanup activities that were happening within the first couple of weeks after the collapse. The NTSB requested that the contractor save certain sections of the bridge for further study, which they did, and then they just disposed of the rest of the debris. Really within the first 1 to 2 weeks, the city and PennDOT were working together with the design team to settle on a typical section. We were limited by some site conditions that we couldn't widen the bridge. We were able to reallocate the width of the bridge a little bit to introduce a shared use path on the one side, which was really a great addition with, as I mentioned before, all the bike and pedestrian activity with the park being under the bridge. We went with a 3-span composite pre-stressed concrete PA bulb T-beam bridge, 460 feet in length. The beams were 8 feet deep and 152 feet long and weighed over 200,000 pounds each. We made the decision to go with pre-stressed concrete just based on initial conversations with fabricators and what we felt would be the quickest lead time. Going into March, we're still working on some site cleanup. As you can see, most of the bridge has been removed. There was a little bit of a lull then in April as we got the design going, but by May and June, we were back out building substructure. We had new reinforced concrete column piers and integral abutments located behind the existing stone masonry abutments. In July, we were up with the substructure was complete and beams were delivered. Delivering beams was quite the event. They had to come down the Pennsylvania Turnpike and actually get backed up down city streets. And really something that was interesting when these beams came up is the neighborhood came out to see them, and it was almost like a parade. There's a lot of community pride in the reconstruction effort. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and after we got the beams up, we moved into deck construction. And by October, we were busy placing the concrete deck, and we have some beautiful drone shots with the fall colors. You would hardly know we're in the middle of the city of Pittsburgh. You might think that we were out in the country somewhere, but this is Frick Park. It's a really great asset in the city. Moving into November, we were finishing up the deck and getting the concrete barriers, pedestrian railings, approach work, and those kinds of things completed. And then December 21st, just before the Christmas holiday, we had a ribbon cutting. The governor of Pennsylvania came in to celebrate the occasion. That's Governor Wolf on the right there. And on December 22nd, we were able to reopen the bridge to traffic, in 2 lanes of traffic. You can see there is a concrete barrier down the bridge, and we were still working on some work on the one side of the bridge and some approach work and under the bridge site restoration. That work continued into the following spring until about May or June. But we got the bridge reopened to traffic, as I said, less than 11 months after the collapse happened. So I went through that incredibly fast, but it was a great project, a lot of teamwork and collaboration amongst all the partners that allowed it to happen. And obviously the bridge collapse was a disaster, and as I think I showed, the reconstruction was a great success. But as you might imagine, after an incident where a bridge collapses, there were a lot of questions, both from the city administration and from the public in the city of Pittsburgh. What about the rest of those bridges? I said we have about 143 bridges. Are they safe? And that's a very reasonable question for people to ask. So the city decided that we would put out a project for what we called the Bridge Asset Management Program. The goal was simple: to assure the public of the safety of our bridges. We would do that by hiring a team to conduct an independent, comprehensive review of all of our bridges, identify any urgent safety issues such as high priority maintenance items that were not previously identified, or even the need to close or restrict a bridge based on updated information. And in addition to that, the more immediate needs, we also wanted this program to help the city's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure develop an asset management program to improve our stewardship of our bridges going forward, not just at that moment, but into the future, to make sure we prevent something like this from happening again. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lou, who's going to talk to you a little bit about this program.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So as Eric said, WSP was hired on August 31st, 2022 to provide a comprehensive bridge asset management program for the city. One of our first tasks was to get a report to the mayor as quickly as possible by October of that year to basically ensure that there wouldn't be any more Fern Hollows out there in the city's inventory. And then ultimately we completed the project by May of 2024. I know one of the questions we got prior to the webinar was, what about the reports? Would they be available to everyone? And you can see the reports of WSP's reports and recommendations on the city's website there at pittsburghpa.gov/mayor/BAMP. Task 2 of our project was to do the report to the mayor. We did get it to them by end of October, and after reviews by the city, the mayor was actually able to report during the opening of the new bridge that the report was complete. Task 3A was to develop a list of intermediate or near-term needs, and we delivered that in March of 2023. Task 3B was a review of the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission's Transportation Improvement Program and the city repair plan, which we delivered in May of 2023. Task 4A was a summary report of recommended routine and preventative actions, including investigation into bridge care, which is PennDOT's program, which does programming and what-if scenarios for all the bridges in the state. And we delivered that in August of 2023. Task 4B, we recommended intervals for bridge rehabilitation and or replacement, also known as the Rehabilitation and Replacement Decision-Making Process Report. It's finished in September of 23. 5A and 5B were recommendations for Bridge Maintenance Division staff and technical staffing for the city's Bridges and Structures Division, which was delivered in December of 23. And finally, 5C and 5D recommendations for process improvements in the state, federal, and city-funded asset management projects, which we delivered in May of 2024. In order to get all this work done so fast, we needed a big team. As part of WSP's team was, I had my right-hand girl who did a lot of work for this project, Alexandra Beyer. But in addition, we hired a number of experienced bridge inspection firms from around the city. And on top of that, we had to make sure that we were meeting certain DB, WB, and veterans goals. So firms like A&A, Azalea, Mackin, and SAI, they really help with review of the reports and recommendations, maintenance priorities, and such. Aertia did the drone work for us. They were a veterans firm. JMT had former Allegheny County and PennDOT maintenance staff on their team, which was very helpful for the staffing discussion. R was brought on to help with any bridge care recommendations. And then finally, ALEM, that's Alex Schuley's firm. Alex was a former director for the city of Pittsburgh and it was very helpful in some of the discussions on the processes. So as we started this project, we ran into some bridge record issues with some spotty, outdated record forms, and you could see the Wabash Railroad Bridge there. I mean, that's all we had there for the project. We did find out, at one point it was sold. We thought it was originally owned by the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh, and then it was ultimately sold to a private firm. We had inadequate inspection history for some of the non-NBIS bridges, like the short span bridges in the park and pedestrian bridges. Ownership records were unclear at times. As Eric mentioned earlier, there's over 400 bridges in the city owned by city, state, transit, PRT, railroad, and sometimes private individuals. There was opportunities to improve the organization and the access to the original construction plans. And as a result, we decided to use a SharePoint site to share documents that both WSP and the city could update. And that turned out to be a really good tool for us. A little bit of highlights of the Task 2 report. We had to go through inspection reports and photos for 147 bridges, and we found out there was no more Fern Hollow bridges out there, which was good to hear and see. The bridges were inspected, and the conditions we wanted to make sure that they were consistent with the photos and identified maintenance priorities, made sure there weren't any out of compliance with PennDOT and federal highway policies, and then we even identified new items as necessary. We confirmed the weight limits that matched the load rating and the signs were properly placed. We recommended any new inspections, load ratings, and then any new sidewalk or bridge closures. We performed the field view of the 32 port bridges, making sure that the critical and high priority maintenance needs were solid for the next 2 years. We used the drone to field view 16 of the hard to access bridges to confirm, again, the critical and high priority maintenance needs. And as I said earlier, we submitted the report to the mayor in October and was finalized in December 21st of 2022. Some of the examples of the findings, here you see gusset plate for the Charles Anderson Bridge. You can notice some of the holes there around the gusset plate. The gusset plate was previously analyzed in 2012, but we recommended a new analysis, and it was a good thing because as a result of that analysis, the bridge had to be closed due to the lower ratings. And currently that bridge is out in construction, undergoing a major rehab. Task 3A was to develop the immediate needs, and we define those as zeros, which need to be done within 7 days, and ones, which need to be done in 6 months. And then the near-term needs, which we defined as priority 2s that need to be done before the next inspection, which in most cases is 2 years. All in all, when we were done, we came up with $11 million in needs. And we also performed a close review, as I mentioned earlier, of the city's 32 port bridges to confirm those needs. This is a little spreadsheet that we use to keep track of everything, and not only the maintenance priority, but what the city was going to do about it if they needed to have their bridge maintenance on call contract out there, and when the repair needed to be done and when it was actually done. Task 3B, reviewed and compared the city's current repair plan with the Transportation Improvement Program for SPC, the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. We look for prioritized immediate repairs for implementation. We reviewed all the maintenance priorities, current work orders, and city's plans for those repairs. And then we proposed changes to priorities, groupings by type of bridge, by type of work, and by geographical location. Again, we used a spreadsheet to help us with that, and you could, we looked at some of where the projects were on the proposed tip, the proposed 12-year program, what the status was on maintenance, and we came up with cost estimates for these projects, and even put the years at which we suggested to have preliminary engineering start, final design, and then construction. Task 4A was to recommend strategies and timeframes for preventive and routine maintenance. A lot of these items here came from my day back at PennDOT in District 11, Pittsburgh area. We tried to clean bridges annually whenever we could. Those combustible materials that were identified under 17 bridges, that was also known as homeless encampments. Those were identified. We also tried at PennDOT to replace joints every 20 years, try to do full paint about 35 to 40 years, or spot and zone painting at the 20-year time frame. With our deck overlays, we'd shoot for 8 to 10 years for asphalt overlays with a membrane. Latex overlays generally lasted 15 to 20 years. With polyester polymer concrete overlays anticipating to last 25 years. Scour repairs usually identified by either by probing or underwater inspections. We try to get those done as quickly as 8 to 10 years. And then we did a lot of culvert pavings to extend the life. Tried to do it around 25 to 30 years to get another 15 or 20 years out of those culverts. Task 4B, we recommended bridges for preservation, rehab, and full replacement. A lot of this was based on the PennDOT District 11 plan for each bridge that was developed with my staff and I at the time before I retired. These timing considerations, we tried to shoot for 15 to 20 years for preservation projects, 40 to 45 years for deck replacements. Those would get extended to 60 years if we had good rigid overlays on them. 160-year life cycle for major bridges, major river crossings, to 120-year life for the rest of them, except for culverts. We look to get about a 40-year life for those metal culverts. Under the staffing, 5A and 5B, we had to create a bridge maintenance division. They only had a bridge maintenance contractor there at the city, and then we recommended staffing for their structure division, which included bridges. We went in and we looked at everything. I mean, we looked at numbers of staff, the positions, the skills. They wanted to know the compensation that was needed to pay these individuals. And we looked at either rental or buying equipment options for them and funding as necessary. We talked about making sure that you had a good emergency response plan as part of that staffing. And then we even looked at the PennDOT Agility Program and other agreement opportunities. So the Agility Program is basically city does some work for PennDOT in exchange for work that PennDOT does for the city. An example of that is they have a river rescue boat that we've used on a number of occasions when barges get hit, and we get on that boat, take a look at the bridge piers, the bridges in general, and then we're able to open the bridges a lot sooner had we not had that boat. This was the staff the city staff as of January 2022. We had 6 to 7 people in the colored blocks there at the time. Had some project managers, project engineers, staff engineers, and then had some consultants who were working for them at the time. They really didn't have a bridge engineer position there like they had in the past for many years. As we went through our recommendations, we thought we recommended to increase the staff from 7 to 25 employees, spread between the maintenance division and the structure division. You can see we recommended breaking up the design and inspection sections under a bridge asset manager there on the left. Also included CAD technicians so they could do their own bridge design projects in-house, and have some people available to do inspections as needed. You know, that was prior to the collapse. That was being done by just design people that were, just didn't have the time always to get out there and work on maintenance priorities. So we thought those should be new positions. We also added some senior project managers, regular project managers, and a city bridge engineer. Also on we have a bridge, we suggested a bridge maintenance supervisor with a foreman, and then 3 maintenance crew positions, along with a project administrator to help with some of the reimbursement agreements, getting them through the system. Under task 5C and 5D, we were looking at process improvements. We identified inefficiencies in the current city processes. Some of the things that we were suggesting, they want us to look at contracting, reimbursement agreements, especially a city-specific reimbursement agreement, legislation if needed for like design build, and budgeting. We recommended the use of higher project estimates to reduce the number of reviews by the Office of Management and Budget, the Law Department, and the City Council. Basically, if a project changed by $1, it had to go back through all those different departments for review, and really slowed the process down. And then we recommended processes for additional funding. We were able to find 13 different federal and state funding opportunities, and we basically recommended one or a couple of those for each of the 146 bridges in the city's inventory. Additionally, overall, we recommended 27 recommendations to the city. Additionally, 9 design and construction contracting ideas, like having up to, not to exceed contracts, doing bridge bundling, PennDOT District 11 actually created an open end for city design projects, wanted them to be more conservative in their programming and cost estimates, and they were able to do 2 bridge bundles that are currently in PE. We want them to have a formal budget request procedure to streamline the approval to reduce requests to the city council, as mentioned earlier. We wanted to have a standard reimbursement agreement for them, but ultimately that cannot be done in discussions with PennDOT. But they have piloted a submission review procedure, doing concurrent reviews and using a centralized database like ProjectWise or SharePoint, and then dedicated training to facilitate these reimbursement agreements. To do that, they did hire they used an existing administrative person. They started doing these tasks, but there still needs to be a little bit more training for that person to make the desired improvements. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Eric.
So yeah, thanks, Lou. Lou went through all the effort of the WSP team, just essentially the city was just way behind. And, for a whole variety of reasons, our staffing had been cut over the years. And, we knew that we were in a tough spot. This asset management contract made a huge difference. All the things that Lou talked about really set us up for success moving forward. And it's a big hole, so we're not there yet, but we're making huge amounts of improvement. And fundamentally, the biggest thing is if someone asks, are our bridges safe, we can confidently say yes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of where we're at these days. First we have, really thorough and accurate inventory now. As Lou talked about, that wasn't the case before. We're primarily using PennDOT's BMS2 system online, but we also can download that data into spreadsheets, example shown here, kind of for daily data manipulation. We created a public bridge dashboard so that this is available to the public. They can, any resident can get online and see where our bridges are and some basic stats about them. So that's just part of our kind of transparency efforts. In the world of bridge inspection, the bridge inspection for all of our NBIS level bridges is done under contract with PennDOT. District 11 handles that contract for us, which is a huge help. But since all this, we have made sure that we're being very involved in that contract and very, very communicative. We meet with the inspection consultant every month for two-way communication, both to see what they have coming up and to make sure we're letting them know about anything that we might want them to pay particular or close attention to. And as we've been able to grow our staff a little bit per WSP's recommendations, we are able to do detailed reviews of all inspection reports by our engineers when they come in, which was not happening pre-Fern Hollow just based on staff capacity issues. Lou mentioned they took a close look at analyses, and that kicked off a large effort. And since that time in 2022, we have new load ratings on file for 83 of our bridges, and to make sure that they're accurately reflecting current conditions. This resulted in 6 closures, since Fern Hollow as part of this work. And we also had to make emergency repairs at 4 other bridges so that they did not have to be closed. And we have reduced load postings at 12 locations over the past several years. Currently, of the 143 bridges that we do have 8 closed bridges in total and 17 load posted bridges in total. So Lou mentioned that PennDOT has a Bridge Cares program that feeds information from their BMS2 database, and it does kind of asset management predictions and recommendations in the future based on deterioration models and based on funding information that you can put into the system. So back in 2024, we ran this model, and you can see on the left side of this graph was the state of bridges in 2023, with red bridges being in poor condition, yellow being in fair condition, and green being in good condition. And for those who aren't familiar with the kind of inspection rating scale, it's a 10-point scale. So 7, 8, 9 would be good condition, ratings of 5 and 6 would be fair, and ratings of 4 and below would be poor. And there's some closed bridges in black at the bottom of that too. Our stats, just based on number of bridges, are summarized on the left in the text. We do have 25% of our bridges in poor condition, which is not where we would want to be. The state of Pennsylvania put a large effort into reducing their poor bridges, probably about 10 to 15 years ago at this point, and their number was lower. It's down at 13%, and nationally it's below 7%. So we have a ways to go. And this graph shows, based on the projects that we had in place and the funding that we had identified, that over time you will see those numbers of poor bridges go down as we are able to get rehabilitation and replacement projects done. But then, as you know, if you don't keep those projects in the pipeline, or if we didn't have things programmed out yet, those numbers could creep back up as you go along. We reran this just a couple weeks ago in 2026. Our numbers have not moved much yet because we have a lot of bridges, I'll show in a bit, in the design process right now for major rehabilitations or replacements or even preservation work. But we've also received more local maintenance funding in the recent budgets, which I'll also talk about in the future. And that is predicting that with the money that we currently have identified, we can actually get our percentage of poor condition bridges down below 10% in 2029, 2030, in that range as all this work comes through. So it shows that while we're not there yet, it shows that we're on the right track. If we can keep up the progress and keep pushing these projects and repairs through, that we are moving in the right direction. Part of that is due to increased local funding. So for those who are familiar with government budgets, usually you have an operating budget for staff and for day-to-day operations, and then you have a capital budget, which is often funded with bond money for more long-term capital improvements. On the operating budget side, before this work, we had no operating funding identified directly for bridge maintenance. So any bridge maintenance work was coming out of our capital budget. After Fern Hollow, we were able to get just under $1 million of maintenance operating budget money annually for maintenance and for other things like local bridge inspection, bridge cleaning, all those kinds of things that should be happening routinely. That number gradually increased, and actually this year our new mayor just reopened our budget and was able to actually bump that number up to 1.9 million. So it's a big increase, and that is predicted in the future that we will maintain at least a reasonably similar operating budget going forward. And that makes a huge difference in the amount of work that we can get done. Our total spending, so of course we do a lot of projects with state and federal money, our bigger projects that are listed on the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. So that's one bucket. But as far as local work that we're doing just using our own money, the right graph here just kind of compares the 4 years prior to Fern Hollow. We spent about a little under $2 million total. And then in the 4 to 4.5 years since that, we've spent almost $8.5 million total. So both through additional funding, through additional staff, through some other stuff I'll talk about next, we've really been able to increase the amount of money that we're spending on an annual basis to get through some of this backlog and make sure our bridges are staying in better condition. Part of that was revamping our bridge maintenance on-call contract. So we have a contractor who can do work orders for us. It's a very efficient way to get work done. For a variety of reasons, the previous contract was not working well for us and it was hampering our ability to get work done. So our engineers totally revamped that contract in 2022 and then again last year. And as a result, it's been much more productive. We've given out about 69 work orders in the last about 4 years. A lot of deck joint repairs and reseals, either strip seals, compression seals, or even M seals, which is something that we got from District 11, more of a short-term fix, but relatively easy to install. Because of course, as anyone in the bridge world knows, leaking joints and water getting down into the beams and into the substructure is really just horrible for bridge life. So we're really putting a big emphasis on that. We've done about 46 high priority work orders to deal with some of those higher priority maintenance items that Lou had mentioned earlier. Things like undermined bearings, delaminated concrete that may be causing hazards, exposed rebar in the decks, downspout repairs, girder, steel repairs, things like that. And we are doing an annual bridge washing work order to make sure that we're trying to keep our bridges clean, keep the scuppers and the gutters functioning, so that water is going where it's supposed to be going. The other thing that Lou alluded to is we started up a brand new bridge maintenance division. This is in-house staff who are doing maintenance work. Of course, some of our smaller work isn't really conducive to putting on a maintenance contract with a contractor because they're just too small for them to do it effectively, and it just costs a huge amount. The city does have streets maintenance divisions, but they really just were not set up to do bridge work and weren't doing bridge work. It was about a 3-year effort to build this division from scratch. Per WSP's recommendation, we have a staffing of 5, and we had to do everything from the ground up, hiring the folks, putting the procedures in place, buying vehicles, even identifying space and all those kinds of things. they are fully functioning and they're working. Our theory was to start small with things like bridge washing, vegetation management, smaller concrete repairs on sidewalks, pedestrian bridges, and even low traffic bridges, and some of the simpler seal replacements. You can see some pictures there on the left. And this year we were able to get 2 seasonal laborers put into the budget. We're just getting those guys on staff now to work over the summer, which will help to give that crew more capacity to take things on. We're also contracting out some traffic control so that staff can work on some of our busier streets as well. Just by way of a case study, one of our bridges, California Avenue, it's a fairly large deck truss. Our bridge crew went out and cleared vegetation, cleaned and flushed the deck scuppers and joints, and it cost them about less than $2,400. If we would have issued this to our on-call bridge maintenance contractor, it probably would have cost us almost $35,000. So this is really a way that we can save money and stretch our dollars farther and get more done. On the Transportation Improvement Program, we have been able to really increase the number of projects that are getting that state and federal funding with the cooperation of PennDOT and the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. This is probably up, 3 times more projects on the tip than back in 2019, 2020 era. We have 2 bridges in construction, 14 in design, and 4 more that are being started up. And we have gotten an annual bridge preservation line item on the tip as well, which helps us with some of that preservation work. Just a couple more slides. So briefly, where we are at today. This is our org chart as of now, and all the positions in yellow are new positions since before 2022, and the green are positions that existed at that time. So we've really been able to increase. We have 16 people plus those 2 seasonal laborers. So we're not quite at the 25 recommended by WSP, but we are making progress little by little on that front. In addition to taking care of the bridges, we found some opportunities to get rid of bridges. In 2024, we demolished the bridge on the left photo, which just carried a parking lot over a busy state route. It was a bridge that we had inherited from a railroad and it was in bad condition and it wasn't serving us. And then there's a pedestrian bridge in the right photo, which had been closed for a number of years, but was still an asset that we had to inspect and honestly was in danger of probably collapsing, and we removed that this year. And our staff is currently working on removing another closed bridge, hopefully this year. So where are we at in 2026? The Bridge Asset Management Program has really helped the city develop an excellent bridge program. We have comprehensive structure, asset, and condition tracking, improved coordination with other stakeholders, owners, the bridge inspectors. Our bridge maintenance contract has been improved and greatly successful. More projects on the tip, the in-house bridge maintenance division. And one other thing that I haven't mentioned yet is as we've grown our engineering staff, we've been able to take on some in-house design projects. We designed the bridge demolition project of that pedestrian bridge, and we are currently designing an under 20-foot bridge replacement with a box culvert. So I threw a lot of information there, but that is the end of our presentation. Thank you. And at this point, I can open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Lou. Great presentation. At this time, we're going to launch into the question and answer. Paul Lyles, the former Georgia State Bridge Engineer, will be kicking us off, and Jamal Al-Qaisi, formerly with FHWA, will help at the end.
Okay, thank you, Kathy and Eric and Lou. Really interesting. Looks like you've come a good ways since Fern Hollow. But anyway, we do have some questions that came in beforehand, and we have some other questions that have come in during the presentation. The first question, came in beforehand. Has the city seen an improvement in deck longevity with the use of epoxy-coated rebar? And if so, has that been quantified?
I can't point to kind of any hard numbers. I will say that we have a number of bridges that were either constructed or redecked back in the 80s, and a lot of those have not shown great performance, like barriers that are just kind of crumbling and things like that. So, I'm definitely hopeful. All of our new bridges, of course, have epoxy-coated rebar, and we're counting on that to give us a lot better life going forward. But I don't have any numbers.
Okay. Many bridges in the Northeast have steel components, as Fern Hollow did. What methods are employed to limit corrosion and section loss?
I guess the biggest thing is well, I got 2 big things I would say. One is if it's a painted bridge, making sure that you're keeping up with the painting. That's very important. and keeping those deck joints and scuppers working so that you're not getting water down on the beams and other steel elements, because that water, of course, will just allow the corrosion to accelerate.
I could add to that
Yeah,
too.
go on, Lou.
Around 2004, the federal government agreed to let us spend federal money on preservation activities. So at PennDOT, we really increased the amount of painting and joint replacement that we did, and now the locals can take advantage of that as well. And it's really extended the life of many bridges, 15 to 20 years by being able to do that work.
Okay. Then here's one. It says, do you have any partial replacement of pre-stressed box beams with transverse potentioning lateral ties?
I don't. I don't know if you've come across that, Lou.
Not my district. I know in the one east of Pittsburgh here, they did some of that work. As far as I know, it worked out well for them.
Okay. Sounds like someone has got that problem somewhere and they were looking for some help. Okay. For the Fern Hollow Bridge, were there foundation concerns and repairs needed?
Yeah, good question. So actually, due to kind of the speed that we were working for the replacement, and with a new bridge type, we ended up just using new substructures and did not make an attempt to reuse the existing ones. We had new piers, so they were, as you saw in the pictures, like 2 round columns with the concrete cap, and those were founded on concrete drilled shafts to bedrock. And then we used integral abutments, concrete stub abutments on steel H piles that were placed behind the existing abutments. The existing abutments were stone masonry and dated from, I believe, about 1896, from actually like the previous bridge. So they are still there, but they're not supporting the bridge anymore.
Okay. It's sort of in a deep gorge there. It says, were there any slope stability issues for the Fern Hollow Bridge? And then you said you used drill shafts for the new bridge.
Yeah, there were not any slope stability concerns that I'm aware of, and all the substructures are founded on rock, driven to bedrock. We just had some minor erosion issues towards the end of the project, but that was more just due to surface runoff, not due to any kind of geologic or geotechnical issues.
Okay. Interesting question here. It says, how do you establish the remaining lifespan of the bridges as part of your new program?
Well, it's going to depend. How the way we did it at PennDOT was we looked at the previous treatments, the age of the bridge, and then with some of our preservation work, we were able to extend a lot of those bridges 15 to 20 years out. As I said, for our major bridges, we try to get 160 years out of the major river crossings, which we think we can based on some of the bridges we just rehabbed in the city. And then most of the remaining structures, you should be able to get 100 to 120 years out of them if you do those treatments we talked about. If you don't, you're not going to get. You're going to be lucky to get 80 years out of them.
How does the city handle oversized and overweight load routing on city-owned streets and bridges, especially with locally challenged bridges?
Say a bit of a manual process. So Pennsylvania, for folks who might not be familiar, they have a permitting system at the state, and they can kind of automatically run most standard bridges through that system. You give them, your axle loads, and they can run bridges. We don't have our bridges in that system. So if someone's applying for a permit from the city and it goes over one of our bridges, we would flag that. And most of the time, honestly, what we do is we would provide whatever analysis files that we have, and we would put it on the permit requestee to analyze it for their load and submit that information to us to verify that it's going to work.
Okay. Here's another interesting one. Is crowdsourced data or data from unmanned aircraft systems, that's drones, UAS, used to determine bridge repair needs?
So as far as crowdsourced data, I would say, not on a systematic basis, but the city has a 3-in-1 system, as probably other municipalities do, where people can call in or use like a web app or their mobile phone, and they can put a complaint in about anything, whether that be a pothole or the trash didn't get picked up, or a concern about, a bridge or some other structure. So depending what kind of things it is, if that was a concern about a bridge, that would get routed to one of our bridge engineers, and they would go out and take a look at it. So in that sense, yes, any information that comes to us, we'll act on and make sure there's no safety concerns out there. Drones are not a primary piece of equipment in our regular bridge inspection program, but they were used as part of this contract. I don't know if, Lou, you want to say anything about how they helped out for your work?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. Again, we looked at 16 bridges that were hard to access, and Zach Workman, who's also on the call, works for Eric, thought one bridge in particular, the Swindell Bridge, we got really good pictures. They were looking to do a rehab on that bridge, and they felt that it could be helpful to the contractors to provide that video to them to get access and really see what the issue was on some of these structures. I know with one of my time at PennDOT and even with WSP, drone use is being used more and more. Cameras have really improved, the drones have improved, and I think it's just going to be another tool to be able to use to access bridges more quickly and thoroughly.
I would also add, I guess, that drone footage that WSP obtained for us on some of those bridges, it was valuable. I mean, inspection reports are good and you have a lot of pictures in the reports, but that's a limited number of pictures you can look at. We had kind of the raw drone, whole series of photos from the information they took, and you really could look through that and really get right to where you want to see something and get a picture of it. So it is very helpful.
Okay. What is the evaluation program that helps predict future deterioration and program preservation proactively? Is that a specific program, or
the city uses Bridge Care? That's a PennDOT program that looks at all the condition ratings and BMS, the load ratings, the previous treatments, and then it spits out a scope of work with a cost estimate and a prioritization for that bridge. Now, you can't just take this data and run with it. I mean, an engineer still has to look at it, make sure they agree with the scope of work and the priority. Oftentimes it might be changed based on whether or not you have a roadway project in the area. So it is being used. I think it's going to take a number of years before you can just trust the data because it's relatively new, and they continue to work to improve it. And I know in my district we use both manual needs and spreadsheets along with Bridge Care to help come up with a final answer. And I know Eric, I'm not sure how the city's been doing. Have you been following along with Bridge Care, or you do your own evaluation?
We do both similarly. We do run Bridge Care from time to time and kind of compare it to where we're at, and then see if we want to make any adjustments to what our plan is, or looking at like the next level programming. What are the next projects that we should be looking to get programmed? It is very helpful for that.
Okay. Do you use AI in your new bridge program at all?
We have not at the city yet. We have not incorporated AI into any of that stuff as of yet.
Okay. Could you discuss the topic of a feedback loop between inspection findings and repairs of the bridge, and the difference between maybe temporary and permanent repairs?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, one of the main purposes of bridge inspection, to ensure safety, but also to identify those things that need to be done and give some sense of what the priority is and what you need to do. Particularly as we've kind of built our bridge division and our program up over the last 4 years, we do have mechanisms with our in-house crews, with our bridge maintenance on-call contractor, that as we're getting inspection reports in and engineers taking a look at the inspection report, reviewing the maintenance items, certainly identifying any high priority items, but also looking through the rest of the list and seeing if there's things that we can get done. We can, put a work order out to our contractor to do something if the funding's available and it makes sense. And then we can report back if items are completed. We report that back to our bridge inspection consultant, and they get that noted in the system, so it no longer shows up as a maintenance item. We do sometimes have to do temporary repairs. I mean, either due to urgency, we have to do something right away, keep a bridge safe while we work on a longer term repair, or if we know that we have a project in the pipeline, maybe we just want to do a shorter term repair because it's more cost effective and it'll get us to that bigger project. But I mean, that's part of, I guess, the kind of engineering and budget analysis. What do we have the capability to do? What do we have the funding to do? And just trying to balance all that is I don't know, it's a bit of a work of art sometimes.
I would add too, I think one of the biggest issues you have with priority maintenance needs is the joints. I know with PennDOT, if you had a leaking joint on an interstate, that was a priority one. They had to fix that within 6 months. Well, many times you can't just go out there and do a design and have a contract done that quickly. So we would do things like put temporary seals in there, like a foam seal product that would get us by until you could get the project done. Eric showed a picture of his crews out there using a caulking gun on the one joint just to stop that till it could be properly repaired. But there's that constant process. And I know that the city does meet with its maintenance crews, and it's, as the inspection reports come in, you look at it. Hey, can I fix it now? Can the crews do it? Can the contractor do it? If not, we put it on the list to be programmed down the road, and it's just a constant cycle like that.
Okay. Were any ABC bridge elements incorporated in the replacement structure?
Like there weren't, I mean, the whole project was accelerated, but the construction techniques were actually pretty standard. So like, I think the speed was in the progressive design build contract. So you can basically start building before you've actually finished design. And a lot of it was just, this project was put number one on everybody's list, from the city to PennDOT to the contractor, the consultant, the suppliers. I mean, we had weekly project, oftentimes a project might have monthly status meetings. We had weekly status meetings. There were probably 30 to 40 people on those weekly status meetings. I mean, the district executive from PennDOT was on every meeting just to set the tone. This is the priority project. We're going to get this thing done. So all those things together made the project accelerated, but no, it wasn't necessarily through, like kind of the ABC techniques that we talk about a lot.
Okay. Out of the suggested positions for engineering in the city, how many of those positions have been filled?
The total recommendation from WSP was 25 people, which includes both engineering and maintenance staff. We are currently at 16. The bridge maintenance division has been fully staffed per WSP's recommendations. The engineering side is we're making progress. It's a little slower, but we've been adding positions as we can. One of WSP's recommendations was to have kind of separate asset management and project management divisions, if you will. We're not quite there yet. We still, are a little smaller, and we do have kind of everybody working on everything kind of thing, but we have several additional project managers and another staff engineer. The contract administrator that WSP recommended, we do have that position as well. So we are we're getting there. It's a process, but we keep trying to build little by little over the years as we are able to get funding for additional positions in the budget.
Okay, and I'm gonna turn it over to Jamal to come in and pick up any questions.
Oh, thank you, Paul. There is a question about the repair. Do you use the link slabs for the repair of structures?
Well, we have at least one example where we've used a link slab. It was actually on a pedestrian bridge, but it connected over two expansion joints, and we didn't need those joints, and we were able to use a link slab to connect over those. So that's one example that I know that we have done. Certainly something, that's the kind of thing that we would look at if we're doing, kind of a rehabilitation project without, where that might be applicable. We would.
Good. Another question here that came in during the presentation: what resources did the city tap into to fund the added staffing and the new bridge maintenance division?
It was in our operating budget. So the city passes that operating budget annually, primarily funded by taxes and other, fees and other things that the revenue the city brings in. Just for scale, our operating budget for the whole city is about $720 million this year. Our Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, our budget is about $15 million. So relatively small piece of the overall city. And that's just grown little by little, incrementally over the years. We've been able to kind of carve out a little bit larger piece of that each year. And that's where the funding came from.
Question is, how many bridges were closed during the inspection procedure versus after the analysis?
I don't know if I have an exact number on that, but a lot of times there was information, the information gathered during the inspection was taken back for the analysis. And then as the analysis was being completed, we'd get a call from the company doing it, from the consultant. They'd say, hey, the numbers aren't working out. You need to close this bridge. And then we did. So that's been the most common situation of how that's kind of unfolded.
Just to add to that, Eric, then we had a sidewalk that we recommended being closed, and I think it was one of the pedestrian bridges that we said that should be closed.
Yeah, and that I think may not have been due to an analysis. That might have just been based more on your condition observations based on deterioration. So we were able to act on that as well.
All right. There's a question about historical structures. Are any Pittsburgh bridge being rehabbed as a historical bridge?
I feel like almost all of our bridges are historic. We have, I mean, our inventory is old, and we do have a lot of notable bridges. The Charles Anderson Bridge that Lou referred to is historic. It's a Weichert Truss. It's a very extensive rehabilitation, but we, determined through the historic process that bridge was able to be rehabilitated, and that was the required course of action versus replacement because rehabilitation was feasible. We have another bridge. Our Larimer Avenue Bridge is a concrete open spandrel arch. That one's in preliminary design. Looks like that one will probably be a replacement because just the level of deterioration, it's not possible to rehabilitate it while meeting historic standards. So those are just two examples, but we have a lot of historic bridges.
When was the original Fern Hollow Bridge constructed?
So the first bridge at the site, I believe, was constructed in 1896. However, the bridge that collapsed, the steel K-frame bridge, was built around 1971. So it was, not actually that old.
That's right. Okay, the next question we have here, what is the yearly structural budget for the city of Pittsburgh?
So there's not a single number for that I can give you, but as far as money available for maintenance and washing and kind of the smaller repairs that we're doing ourselves, this year we have around $2.8 million available for that between our operating budget and our capital budget. We have a lot more money for the projects like with the state and federal funding where we're providing typically a 5% match. I don't have exact numbers for that, but in the tens of millions of dollars for some of those larger programmed projects.
Jamal, I'm going to go ahead and cut in. We're at the end of our hour and 15 minutes. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you very much to Eric and Lou for presenting a very interesting topic. We did have a number of questions come in on whether or not the presentation would be archived, and it will be. It'll be available on the IBT ABC UTC's website in the webinar archives. And with that, our webinar is complete. Thank you.